Hello everyone, welcome to Wednesday! Yeah, it's part 2 of daily number 570 where we're learning all about... ate a little bit and break. We're learning all about ZvP in the late game by ROOTCatZ. What I wanted to do is step into a really long game between Cats and FXO's theory that is a good example of this strategy having some flimsiness to it. And, well, I don't want to say flimsiness, but how mistakes can happen with this strategy and how Cats repairs that sort of situation. It has this strategy I like because it has a more interesting feel than Broodlord Infestor, which felt a lot like, well, you can't kill me, I have Broodlord Infestor, unless you land a Vortex, in which case I lose immediately. This has a lot more interesting control, positioning, and decision-making stuff going on. So we'll yet again see Swarmhost Viper in action, and also see another example of how the mid-game can differ, but we'll still snake our way back to the usual. Alright. Down the bottom left of Daybreak is FXO Theory. Up in the top right, from Root Gaming, as you might imagine, is Cats. I'm going to go ahead and ×8 it. Why not? We're going to be looking at 2 games in part 2 today. Great. So, come on, let's do this. Alright, so Cats goes for an early expand and sees, oh my gosh, no base. So he pools straight away. Polar opposite of what we saw in game number, I guess, in the game we saw in part 1, where Cats is going for like some crazy 4 hatch before pool stuff. Look at how defensive he is. Look at how aggressive Theory is being with Zealots, Scouting, Mothership Core, and Stalker also joining. Nexus coming up. And then we have some more air units coming up. Ew, gross. But, per usual, Zergling speed. Holding up a little bit of cash, so that way he can soon enough expand. Expando! Yes, Commando Expando. Killing off a Free Stalker. We're also seeing Cats get kind of an earlier layer. Does a little bit of poking at the front. Photon Overcharge. Not quite enough to kill this Overlord. Oh yeah, bring that Stalker back. This is a little bit more typical of a look for a Protoss player. Not devoting absolutely everything to air, but using some air to do some annoying harassments like this. Nice timing on that transfuse. And rather than go for Hydralisks, Cats we're seeing actually go for Infestors first. It's a sensible decision. Our opponent opened up 1 gate, then expand, then Stargate. So he's unlikely to be hurling a lot of Stargate units at us. And this is a good defense against the sort of small arrayment of stuff that could be thrown at us. So notice how the Hydralisks have not really yet come in there. There's finally a Hydralisk den coming down. The last game we made maybe 20 Hydralisks, but no big deal. Cats is spotting this Expo, trying to deny it. And switching to Swarmhost a little earlier, Cats kind of sensing that his opponent is going long term. And especially upon seeing this. Colossus, voidrays. This is a very late game focused Zerg. Excuse me. This is a very late game focused Protoss. There's nothing, there's not a ton of Stalker Sentry here. It's a lot of the big meaty Robo and Stargate units. So you can kind of conclude as Zerg, alright, this guy is probably going to go 3 base and turtle. We're at 12 minutes into the game. Alright, nice. So Cats actually transitions almost immediately into the Swarmhost Viper. And you can kind of tell because once again the hidden component to this is drones. Cats already at 64 drones, getting another 13, and will get, oh, so many much more. And an instant Hive Tech to begin getting them Vipers up. Any defensive structures we build early we're not that upset about because we have the fortunate opportunity to use them yet again in our late game push. For any of you who did not know, if you right-click on debris, it doesn't kill them. You have to issue an attack command. So certainly, a couple of infestors that we built early on, plus these swarm hosts, more than an apt defensive tool. FXO Theory, I think, is really sharp and on point with a lot of the recalls this game. And timing these sorts of attacks so that they do have a recall advantage. But great, look at this. Vipers coming up. Holy cow. In fact, if you look at the unit counting station, 17 Lings, 89 drones, 13 swarm hosts, 3 infestors, and vipers. It's literally swarm host viper, drone, and virtually nothing else. However, as sort of a hidden component, we're going to begin seeing upgrades for Hydras. Upgrades for Ultras. Another expand goes down. Some spotting goes on, and also some queens get thrown in. Extra minerals, great to dump into queens. Can spread creep, can transfuse our vipers, can transfuse our swarm hosts, can transfuse the defensive structures that are part of this. Have I mentioned yet that right-clicking on these debris does not do anything, that you have to issue an attack command? Brutal. ZvP doesn't realize that he's actually performing no aggression in the slightest for quite some time. Everything else is being rounded out by cats. See? Ultraless Cavern. Ooh, all the Hydra upgrades. More upgrades, 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 upgrades. And I think Theory's doing what is expected of a Protoss player in this position. To begin, rounding out a ultra-death late-game army. So, perfect. We'll just watch cats deal with that quite well. The 100-some drones are used to build these lines of defensive structures, while our swarm hosts whittle away and continue to be annoying. We're seeing great information on what the Protoss army could possibly be, because of the fact that our locusts are always heading to the front. A couple Viper pulls almost kill off 5 colossi. Really slick recall on that mothership core. I love that. That was so good. At the other expansions, we just spine it. A couple more spines would be good here, but ZvP does another subtle thing that's also very, very smart. All his key structures are sort of down here, where it's a little bit easier to defend with a swarm host army. There's not a lot on the fringes. It's close to the center of the map. Yeah, and check it out. Continuing to drill. Continuing to drill it up. Now, one thing that I will note, I'm personally of the opinion that unless you have a lot of defensive structures, spine crawlers, and spore crawlers, probably are going to want some hydralisks in this composition. Just some. It's a great way to pick off some of these key air units. It's a great way to use the locusts as sort of the meat at the front. There's another pull. He waltzes it right on back so it can be killed off. But just the extra damage of a handful of Hydras is, I think, pivotal in these sorts of exchanges. But we're seeing this basic logic work yet again. These locusts make it very difficult for these High Templar to get into a good feedback position, because they just get picked off. And see them pulling back. At the front now, we have these archons taking some damage. There's really not going to be a lot of good feedbacks by Theory. Not because he's not controlling well, but because ZvP is positioning really, really well. And see, oh, there's an attempted, there's 1-2 feedbacks on an infestor and a queen. Not great. These are still taking damage. And as long as the creep spread is there... See, look at these Viper pulls being super economic. This was certainly a blunder. But even then, only 2 infestors. And in the midst of all this, this is the one thing I keep not focusing on so much, because frankly, this is really interesting up here. We're seeing really cool battles. But ZvP has taken more than half the map, and is just slamming down a ton of defensive structures. This is why I said drones are the hidden component to this build. Having a lot of drones leads to a lot of defensive structures, but this is a lot more fast and a lot more finesseful of an execution. And the units lost tab, we're seeing a lot lost for Protoss, not a lot lost for Zerg. Now, we're about to see one of the issues that I have been noticing arise with this style of play, which is that some straight, just huge, screw it, I'm going to go kill this guy, those sorts of moves are actually pretty effective unless there's a lot of spine crawlers in the battle. So if for some reason these infestors don't get into a good spot, like right here, there's not a lot of fungals going off to keep all these dudes back. A lot of these voidrays don't have a particularly large amount of spore crawlers reinforcing. So this push ends up kind of collapsing here. there was not enough extra things to deal damage, like defensive structures or hydras. So KatZ, that's fine. He's not dead in this position. He replenishes with Ultra Hydra. And my apologies for Swarm Host dying so loudly. But great, replenishing with Ultralisk, Hydralisk. These positions, very well defended. Continued big ol' cup. Oh, defensive structures. There's the 3/3 upgrades coming up. This army, although it is a death army, is pretty slow. It's difficult for it to be in a lot of positions at once. It can't really deal with a swift Ultra Hydra sort of counterattack. So in these kinds of engagements, KatZ just does a poke. Okay, cool. He's returning back to more Swarm Host production now that he has all these defensive structures up. And begins doing some counterattacking. This is one thing that's very, very nice about these big ol' lines of things. Alright, cool. Look at Ultra Hydra up against the Great Wallow Cannons. Something that's a little unfortunate that we can't see is that in this unit lost, a lot of the units lost for Theory is gas, and a lot of the units lost for KatZ is minerals. And we can sort of see it represented right here, where we see that Theory really does not have a significant amount of gas when compared to KatZ. And there's not a lot of good that just Zealots can do in this position. So KatZ gets himself a free base, nifty, replenishing Swarm Hosts, replenishing Vipers, replenishing Infestors. Going back to the same army we've been talking about for a long time. Swarm Host Viper. So I would call that mid-game, that little mid-gamey thing, an error where KatZ kind of lost that and then lost some significant momentum. But let's take a look again at the setup KatZ has for himself. Same as before, Swarm Hosts, it's going to be more Vipers, but now we have a couple of Hydras involved. So this game, fortunately, presents the solution to the problem we saw earlier, which is just to have a couple of Hydras involved into this. Unless, of course, you have a ton of Spinecrawler Spore. Then I think it's fine to cut out all the Hydralisks. 5 more Vipers coming up. Protoss finally begins to secure himself an expansion, and we see, at this moment, what's going on with the resources, why this ends up really working out well. Tons of minerals, no gas. A little low on minerals, plenty of gas. And minerals are not as restrictive as gas is in terms of strategy, so KatZ is going to be able to build up a much better, much gas-heavier army when compared to Theory, who's going to have a lot of Zealots or Cannons, both of which are real bad against this mix that KatZ is going to be throwing out. So, where do we push? We push whatever is closest. Whatever is the big key vulnerable position. And I'm going to go ahead and X8 this. Come on! Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on, come on! Come on! Come on! Alright, cool. So we can see the Hydralisks do provide a little bit of that extra damage. Locusts, per usual, pushing back these Templars so they can't get good storms and or feedbacks. Theory, by the general measure of the way ZvPs go, played very well. The instant something gets just slightly in the wrong position, it gets punished freaking hard by the Infestor Hydra component. All the Hydras in the back. And once again, we see that Zerg will be able to even things up once he's in this position. The Ultra Hydra is not as cost efficient as this mixer, especially against this sort of hyper cost efficient Protoss army. But once we get these Swarm Hosts up, and if we actually go to the Army tab, we see that KatZ has slightly more actual size to his army, but that will change soon enough. It's a slow and steady kind of style, with just more Locusts coming up. Ooh, using Vipers and Hydras to pick off a couple units down there. Come on! Come on! This is certainly, this is actually a lot easier and less intense of a style. It requires some good positioning of the Vipers, but it's not like, you know, trying to dodge a bunch of force fields. And Protoss just has no real good way to spend the minerals. Oh, there's not a lot of action here. I'm trying to times 8 it so that way we can see some interaction. Come on, get there. Get there, come on. Slow. There's actually slow progress creeping forward. And the instant Protoss gets a little bit too greedy. There's the punishing happening on that south side, picking up some tempests. Yeah. Probes dying. Army tabs getting very, very even. Both players increasingly low on voidrays. Oh, for God's sake, end. I want this game to end so I can go on to the next game. I want it to end. I think it's clear that KatZ has an edge. KatZ is doing this sort of funky stuff, but I'm not actually that mind blown by that. If you're against a slow opponent, you can always do those sorts of things. Nidus Worm would probably be a little bit more effective. Put the attempted push-up, and then same basic ideas as before. Easy fungal on packed targets like voidrays. Easy Viper pulls on all the rest of the big units like the carriers into the Hydra Spore. Big units like the Mothership Core get pulled hard. And Units Lost tab really reveals how bad these engagements go for the Protoss player. Whew! I think that game illustrated a critical point. Just took a little while to get there because KatZ wouldn't freaking kill him. Ugh! What I want to do now is I want to close this replay and hopefully it doesn't crash. Oh my god, please! Please! Alright. Every now and again it will crash that. It's a little bug in HOTS. I don't know why. I don't know why. I don't know why. Where was the other thing? Ah, yes. Okay, cool. So that game was a little bit of a long game where I think KatZ was in a winning position. Didn't have enough units defending his very strong Swarm Host Viper push. So he got a little bit thrown off kilter. But then regained his footing, had a little bit of extra Hydras, and got in good shape. And that was a long instance of it. What I want to show in this game is that you don't need to do these long games. I'm going to go through a very swift game between KatZ and an EU Grandmaster by the name of Grey something. Grey Warden, I think I want to say. From Serbia. Yeah, Grey Warden. So, we're going to see KatZ do yet another type of opening. Oh, I've identified my opponent going for an early expand. So he's going to go for this 4-hatch sort of business, where he identifies the opponent not going to be aggressive. So he goes ahead and takes a 4th hatchery. You don't have to do this. It's not that critical. It leads to its own set of funkinesses, and KatZ actually gets into a pretty good position in the early game. Stargate harass, Mothership Core harass, there's going to be some attempted pokes. KatZ knows how to play off these kind of funky openings very, very well. If you went for a standard 3-base, that's fine. I don't care. If you want to be cool and be KatZ, good luck. These are very tricky, and KatZ just has a lot of experience with it. So KatZ manages to deflect everything, and right now I think it's pretty easy to label KatZ as in a winning position. Why am I showing this game? Because it's very important for every player to be aware of the long-term endgame goal and where there are opportunities to maybe take wins in the mid-game, but you can't do those at the expense of this late-term goal. So in this circumstance, what's our late-term goal? Swarm Host Viper win. That's our big goal, having that composition. It's tempting here to go, well, I was going to go Swarm Host Viper, but maybe if I just build a Roach Warren, I can overwhelm him with Roaches, because I basically have 4 running bases, and he's just trying to take his 3rd. Don't do it. Let's watch the way that KatZ plays this off. This is a great example of having a strong lead, being in good shape, and exploiting the lead without sacrificing the long-term plan. Pow! So, Zergling speed goes down. Extractors get loaded on up. Roach Warren, this is just in case for early defense. Double Evo Chamber, gets the Infestation Pit. Zerglings try to apply pressure here. They almost kill this off. Very nearly, KatZ just pulls back and target fires. Oh, see, applying pressure with Lynx. Still droning. Still adding on the Hydras for just general defense. He doesn't kill it, which means that his life is automatically painful and bad. And this is suddenly an enormous target. KatZ is building some Zerglings. He's not doing the traditional Zerg move, which is to go all in, sacrifice all drones in favor of killing this off. Just still droning. Still trying to get up to a nice money, 76, cool. Getting the pathogen glands up, getting the attack upgrades for both these things. Sends in some Zerglings, yay, kills it off. And then look at this, Hydralisks popping out. Some Swarm Hosts, some Infestors. A couple of these defensive structures go down. We're taking an earlier one of these. We're actually going to see KatZ just do some normal Ling Hydra production. Here's an attempted push with a very odd set of units, given the odd situation that the Protoss is in anyways. We just see mass Hydra Ling production. Standard mid-game defense in Heart of the Swarm to rely on the Hydralisks with their range 6 and their mega move speed. So look at this, KatZ overwhelmed with Hydra Ling. Notice that he probably wasn't originally going to build that many Hydras, was probably going to be favoring more of these Swarm Hosts, but now that his Hive is done, Ultra Cavern, just as desired, getting these extra upgrades as desired, rounding out the rest of the Hydralisk speed as desired, and just waltzing his way up. The Swarm Host Viper plan is still kind of hidden underneath here. We can see the Vipers getting added in. But now all of a sudden we see KatZ getting into a position where he's denying expansions, and he's going to begin the Swarm Host push here. So where, oh where, are your glorious Swarm Hosts? Very clear edge. Very, very clear. KatZ is like crushing this game. But just waltzes himself right up to the front lines and begins doing the Swarm Host push from a lot closer of a location without violating any of the principles that we noted before. Defensive structures and Hydras to protect the Swarm Hosts. Vipers to pick off any valuable units, and if he doesn't really have any valuable units, then we're just going to win it in these straight-up engagements. These Vipers don't really have a lot of utility with their Abduct, but have plenty of utility with Blinding Cloud and Fungal Growth. So perfect. Nice. Easy peasy. Very effectively played out game. Not nearly as slow as before, but still the same general notes. Doink and doink. KatZ also does this thing that in the late, in these late positions, especially when he's starting to add on Ultralisk, begins going kind of like Queen Ultra with a lot of transfuses. It's pretty sweet. And is just completely, utterly obliterated his opponent. And GG is going to happen in a matter of seconds. Look, there's another minute and a half for the game. KatZ wins. Do you believe me? So what I want to do now is take yet another break, and when we come back, what we're going to look at is two final games. One of them showcases a really weird mass Tempest opening that seems like it could really threaten KatZ, and we'll see how this end goal with some flexible thinking in the mid game easily takes care of it. And lastly, I want to show a game that I think will highlight what some of the potential weaknesses of this style of play are. Let's go to a break. Bam! Be back in 3 minutes.